when teams position themselves to contend for championships or playoff spots. Who's in a better shape than it seems? Who's shakier? And you know it. Tell the story. Tell the whole damn world this is Bear territory as College Game Day prepares to go to Cal. This is the College Game Day podcast for Wednesday, October 2nd. Rece Davis and Pete Thamel reminding you to please download this podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe, so you never miss a single thing that Pete Thamel says, because everything he says is gold. Information that you need for a college football Saturday. Pete, we touched on this a little bit when we spent extensive time on Monday talking about the Alabama-Georgia game. And if you look at, we're still a few weeks away from the college football playoff rankings coming out, but a couple of things struck me. The obvious one is you have a new number one in Alabama in the Associated Press poll anyway. And you also have some conferences with, where you're already starting to sense that, you know what? These guys that's going to be a one-bid league when selection day comes out. I'm thinking the Big 12, not a lock, but at least in terms of where they're ranked. So let's start at the top with Alabama, Georgia falling to 5, Texas at 2. How do you feel about how this is positioning in the SEC for number of bids in the playoff? We're a long way away, a lot of ball to be played. I got that, but you're looking at it starting to look like 4 or 5 bids coming out of the SEC.
Yeah. You were pretty bullish, Rece, I remember, on 5 when we kind of had this convo early in August, kind of going in, because look, this is all new and you can model it to death.
Right.
But that's only going to show you so much, right? Like, it's just, in all models were built off of leagues that don't look like the leagues as they are now, too, right? Like, you can't model this out with Texas, Oklahoma in the SEC because you can't account for who they're playing and who they're giving losses to and who they're losing to, etc. So, as we sit here today, and this also dovetails into the debate as the new format. Now we're in the 12-team format. We have that for 2 years for certain. It's widely expected to go to 14 after that. There's been some modest clamoring at different times, especially from Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commissioner, for automatic bids. And the question looms whether they're needed, right? So that's a long way to say that, yeah, like, I would think it would be a surprise if there wasn't 4, right? Like, I think that's fair to say at this point. And yeah, I mean, it's certainly with so much league play to come, there are just going to be so many guaranteed losses, right? Like, that's just part of it all right now. But I would think that, and look, like Missouri, for example, has not been tested. I'm looking at your ranked SEC teams right now. Oklahoma, I mean, they could have a chance, but boy, does that not feel like a playoff team, right?
No. Yeah, right.
LSU,
I agree.
Yeah, LSU is ranked,
Same.
In there. They don't feel like it, but they feel like more of one than Oklahoma, mostly because they have a quarterback. But I don't think LSU can stop enough people to be a playoff team. We'll get an answer on Missouri. So all of a sudden, we could look, and let's just say A&M probably doesn't feel like a playoff team either right now under Mike Elko. Like, I think they could be. Are you ready to rule them out?
Not yet, because of the schedule.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because, I mean, and I always say, if you're not good enough, a loss will find you. But what if you're good enough to navigate what you're almost good enough, and you're good enough to navigate the schedule in front of you, and you also have the advantage of home games, which for the majority of their big games remaining, almost all of them, almost exclusively, Texas A&M will be in College Station. So, I think they sort of fit into that mold. Our friend Bill Connolly, you sent me this stat first thing this morning, actually, that as we start October, 44 teams have at least a 3% chance of a playoff bid that's per SP+. Now, what does 3% mean? I don't know, but I think—
So you're saying there's a chance?
Exactly. That's exactly the point, Pete, is that there is a chance. And there is hope. And you've said this a lot of times, and it pertains to coaching changes. It pertains to fan interest. If you can sell hope, that's a good thing for a lot of different teams. And I think Texas A&M would fall into that category in the SEC. And there are a multitude of teams across other conferences that fall into that category. As you look at, you look at the Big Ten, maybe teams like Missouri, like A&M that you're not sure about, but they're ranked in the AP poll right around the spot of where they would be in playoff contention. Teams would be Michigan and USC. Again, I don't know that they feel like playoff teams right now because of the holes. Despite what happened in Ann Arbor, I would argue that USC feels a little bit more like a playoff team than Michigan does, but then you certainly honor the result of the game that was played.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan won it.
What about mighty Indiana? Do we have to start at least pondering them as a potential team that could make the college football playoff?
I'm going to be honest, and I'm a fan of what Cignetti and friends have done there. I think Rourke has been sensational for them. I don't think he played quite as well last week, but you're not going to play perfectly every week. I think it was last week. At any rate, their schedule helps them. They do get Michigan, Ohio State in November. I sort of
Indiana, Michigan for game day?
Maybe. I mean, that you never know. I'd have to look at the other schedule then, but certainly if they're undefeated, there's probably, that we're getting in November, we probably have, some pretty sizable games in the SEC and the Big 12 by then too. But I think Indiana, to me, falls more into the Colorado category of what I said Monday, which, Colorado is a fascinating study because they're in that 3% that Bill was talking about. And after Nebraska and going into Colorado State, and with all the talk from Colorado State, I used the term existential crisis. And I think that had Colorado lost that game, that it would have, it could have come unraveled very quickly. Instead, they win that game decisively. They get the Hail Mary and the overtime win against Baylor, and then they go and take care of UCF, aided by turnovers, largely for sure.
And really, they haven't taken care of anyone since Dion got there. Now, again, took over a dumpster fire, a lot of, but they hadn't gone and just pounded a conference opponent. Like their one conference win last year was Arizona State, and it was a nail biter. So give them credit. To me, that's a huge step forward for them.
I think so too. So my point in bringing them up is that I think I said on Monday that I don't think they'll win the Big 12. I don't think they are a real playoff contender, but I do think they're good enough to have a say by clipping somebody. That's sort of how I feel about Indiana. Now, there aren't a lot of opportunities for Indiana, but there is the Michigan game that you mentioned. They are at Ohio State. I certainly don't think that they are likely to win that game. But, I saw a Michigan State team go in to Columbus in 2015 that, in all honesty, with a backup quarterback, had no business winning that game. Zero business winning the game. And they not only won the game, they went to the college football playoff and won the Big Ten championship. So it's not unprecedented. I think Colorado, Indiana, different conferences, obviously, but Indiana is sort of in the same boat in that I think they are more likely to have a say in who does win it by maybe pulling an upset than they are to win it themselves.
Yeah, that's fair. That was a classic Thamel hijack right there. But we haven't talked about Indiana a ton. Curt Cignetti.
No, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. It's a good one.
Has to be one of the favorites for Coach of the Year.
Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
Has to be one of the favorites for not only Big Ten, but national. There's others, and we can have that whole conversation another time. But you used the word crisp, I think, Rece, to describe them the other day. I don't remember if it was on the pod or just in conversation. Yes, they are a professional outfit. Like, he has gone in there, brought baseline competency everywhere, got everybody's pants on fire about NIL, and Curt Cignetti has an extreme confidence in Curt Cignetti. And you have to have a little bit of that to win at Indiana. There's a reason nobody's really won there in 50 years, right? Like, you have to have some self-assuredness, and he is assuredly self-assured. Give him credit. He came in saying, I remember I was in his office in March. I went over when I was at the combine, and I was like, why can you win here? And he stood up and he said, why can't you win here? And I was like, oh, because the coaching wing is named after a guy with a losing record, Bill Mallory.
Yeah. Well, how about this? I like Cignetti, but he's my second favorite Indiana football coach of all time, behind Lee Corso.
Of
And
course.
when LC was took over a program in such dire straits, and people don't remember Lee Corso was an outstanding football coach. He had tough jobs, and elevated them, made them better. And I'm pretty sure it was the Ohio State game that they got a lead in Ohio State, and took a picture of the scoreboard, which coincidentally, I'm going to take a screenshot of the Superdog standings on Saturday in very similar fashion. So, like LC leading Ohio State when he was in Indiana. But I think what's the story? What was the question and what was the whole story when Signetti said, "Google me"? Sort of, sort of like him standing up and going, "Why
What
can't
do
you
you
in here?"
tell kids in the portal about you? Like,
Yeah,
and why you should come to Indiana? Like, what's your message? And he just said,
Google me.
Google me. Yes. Yeah. He's got Mellencamp playing NIL, like, whatever grand ahead NIL deals. He's got Pink Houses on his side. He's got Jack and Diane on his side. They're doing something right there in Bloomington. Yeah, they're like, yeah, this isn't like again, they haven't played stiff competition, but they have won authoritatively in all their games.
I've gotten a lot of play from you guys. I guess Blind Squirrel finds a nut from time to time about the Big 12 being wider than it is deep, meaning that everybody's going to beat everybody else. We've talked a lot about Colorado, but the highest ranked team in the AP poll from the Big 12 is Iowa State. They're just ahead of BYU. Both those teams undefeated. BYU unexpectedly so. I don't think Iowa State, outside of they finally found a way to win the non-conference game against Iowa, terribly surprising to be there. But still, I feel as if this is a one bid conference in all likelihood, not because it's not good, but because they're all just going to wreck each other, as BYU did Kansas State unexpectedly. And that's not the only time it's going to happen to BYU before this is over somewhere. And whoever is able to survive all of this really good football. And when I say one big league, I'm not trying to say that they aren't good. I think you've got a lot of good and not much great. And so it doesn't mean that playing a tough schedule and beating up on each other is, disqualifying. I think it just means in this particular conference, this particular year, you've got a whole lot of good teams and no one that I really look at and say they are capable of setting themselves apart, even if they were to lose the conference championship game. Now, look, if Iowa State goes undefeated and loses in the conference championship game, they're probably still getting in, and they probably should. But I sort of suspect that whoever gets there, everybody's going to have a couple of losses, by the time, and whoever gets to that championship game, the winner's going to get in and get the 4 seed, and whoever doesn't probably will be just on the outside.
Yeah, where do we sit on Utah right now? I think they're one of the most fascinating teams in the league, Reese. Now, Cam Rising's finger, again, giving another Cam Rising injury update, getting sort of deja vu from the last 2 years. They have a bye this week, obviously, and then they come back, and I believe they have they're all games of significance. Okay, they go to Arizona State. I think that's a Friday night game. So they come back with the, bye week, short week at Arizona State, TCU at home, at Houston, and then the Holy War. Gosh, we could be there on November 9th. Forget
Yeah,
Bloomington,
that'd be
right?
that'd be amazing if they're both unbeaten. That would be great.
It looked
Yeah.
electric, that K-State game. I mean, it looked electric there. So long story short, like, I just feel like Utah can kind of find their sea legs. Let's hope Cam Rising gets back healthy and we get to see him. We haven't really seen the full Cam Rising since 2022 now, correct? So let's just hope for his sake he's back healthy for an extended period of time, slinging it around, looking like he looked against Southern Utah and back confident and ready to go. I'm not going to write Utah off, and I'm not saying you were, just after this loss, because I feel like he unlocks their offense a little bit. I think they found something for the future in Isaac Wilson, but I still think there's enough grit and enough defensive talent in that program where they could put the pedal down and still win here and make a run. And if you've got one loss Utah versus undefeated Iowa State, I don't think they play. Then I'm just drawing up some scenarios, and I'm not poo-pooing your notion. Statistically, you are, you are 100% correct, Rece, right? Like,
Yeah, they do play
they
Pete
do play.
on the 23rd in Salt Lake City, at least according to the
Yes.
schedule I'm looking
Yep.
at
No, you're
here.
looking at
So
that. I missed that. So
yeah.
again, that's thus encapsulates the reason why you're skeptical of a two-bid league is that these guys are going to knock each other out.
Right. And that's the only reason, I don't want this to be perceived as I'm bagging on the Big 12. I mean, it might be the
You
most
switched your
entertaining
insurance from
league.
Allstate, Rece? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I just feel like, these games week in and week out, you're sitting there last Saturday night, even after Alabama, Georgia, watching Arizona and Utah. And I agree with you. I think they found something for the future. Isaac Wilson's turned the ball over a lot, but you can tell he can play. And, he's having to play sooner than they expected. And I think he's done an admirable job, for the most part, but they could certainly get a boost if they get rising back. The one thing I will say is that Iowa State, with all of that experience, and Rocco Becht, who is really playing well, and a quarterback that people are going to continue to learn more and more about as the season goes along. Iowa State might rise to that level above and have a chance to get a cut above. And certainly if
Mhm.
Rising gets back, Utah could do that as well.
Yeah. But this league, wide deep, as you've been saying, is arguably the most fun league, just pound for pound, the most fun top to bottom. Because there are going to be games like that. BYU K-State game is a perfect example. That game was completely bananas. Dun, 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 run around, kick back. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing was set to a circus soundtrack. And as we peek ahead, Rece, this K-State Colorado game coming up in 2 weeks could really be like one of the marquee games of the whole season. Um, I just feel like you got, what a quarterback battle that's going to be, right? When you have Shedeur Sanders going against Avery Johnson, who's been, look, Avery Johnson has a little ways to go, but nobody's going to argue that it hasn't been a blast to watch, right? I mean, he's been he's been a lot of fun. The Buffs have a bye this week before hosting the Wildcats, and the Wildcats are also off. So both will be resting at home and waiting for what probably is going to be a top 25 matchup. I would think Colorado could sneak in the polls. They have to be right on the cusp here off the bye. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
It is. And sneaking around the chicken coop out in Lubbock, Texas Tech hasn't lost a conference game. They've had the benefit of outlasting Cincinnati and Lubbock the other day. I think I'm looking. They might have played. Yeah, they played both of their conference games at home. They're going to Arizona this week. That'll be a test for them. They've got Taj Brooks, who one of the top running backs in the country. So there are a lot of teams in the Big 12, hence to my point, capable of getting you, especially in their building. There are some traps in that league, man. Provo and Lubbock and Ames, yeah, Morgantown. I know they're not off to the greatest start, but they're fully capable,
Some dreams have
particularly.
died in Morgantown over the years in that league.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And on one notable occasion, West Virginia's has too. But it's they certainly can get riled up there, get it revved up, make it an extraordinarily difficult place to play. We're going to find out just how difficult a place to play Cal is this week when College Game Day goes in there. Miami, undefeated, seemingly in the early going after the escape from Virginia Tech, the team to beat in the ACC. Although I still would argue that it's Clemson. No disrespect intended to Miami. Not just trying to stick with my preseason pick, but I think Clemson, even by the pollsters right now, is a little bit undervalued. I'd have to look to make sure. I think I have them in my top 10. If I don't, they're 9, 10, 11, somewhere in there in that group of teams. And look, they lost to Georgia, and I don't know that they had totally turned their offense loose yet. They didn't use the freshman receivers as much as they are now. So I do view Clemson, in my judgment, as the best team in the ACC overall. But Miami's really good.
Yeah.
And they've got an electric quarterback in Cam Ward, and they escaped one. And I think we've talked about sometimes in a championship season, you need a moment like that you pull one out of the fire, which is what Miami did against Virginia Tech. Now they go to Cal team that lost to Florida State, but a Cal team that went to Auburn, picked off 4 passes and won. One thing to think about with Miami and Cal this week as you evaluate the ACC and this game, if the ball is in the air, it's in jeopardy. I mean, because Cal has 10 interceptions and Miami's got 9, so you better be precise when you put that thing up, because they've shown an ability to take it away. Miami, Clemson, anybody else in that category in the ACC, or do you have one that you favor over the other?
Not right now. I do give Clemson a lot of credit. I think they've sort of stormed back and showed who they are. Feels like they've unlocked that offense a little bit. And this is the Cade Klubnik that Dabo always wanted, right? This is the Cade Klubnik we knew in recruiting. This is the Cade Klubnik that didn't really show up the past couple of years. And so great for him, right? Like there's no linear trajectory in college football. You always say, Rece, you have to leave room for improvement. You can't just rule out guys getting better. And I give Cade Klubnik a lot of credit for doing that. I think the improved receiver core that you point out is really important there. I'm excited to see Cam Ward live on Saturday night. Throughout his vagabond college career, I have never had that distinct pleasure. And I'm going to do a modest hijacking here, Rece, and a little tease of an exercise we're going to do on game day on Saturday of who is QB1. As you know, we both cover the draft, and I'm a draft junkie. You're a draft junkie, and I cannot remember. I'm sure there's a year, but I cannot remember in recent years the order of quarterbacks being so muddled at this point. A year ago, it was a race between Caleb Williams and Drake May, and then Jade Daniels, because there's room to get better, stormed in and took that second spot. But usually and quite frankly, for 2 years, we sort of saw the Drake Caleb race coming. Right now, Rece, I polled 20 scouts today. We're still polling right now, so everything isn't. All votes are not in from all corners of the poll yet. But there are 5 different quarterbacks in the conversation for QB1 right now. Can you name them, Rece Davis?
I can give you who I think it'll be. I'll say in the conversation among those scouts, I'll say Quinn Ewers, Shedeur Sanders, Carson Beck, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe.
Boom. Those are the 5. Not all 5 have gotten first place votes yet. I'm just doing first for this kind of exercise. I will tease that. Maybe I'll let people wait. There's a clubhouse leader early on. Let's just say, and I had one scout tell me today. He was like, I really want to say Cam Ward, but I'm not ready to say Cam Ward yet. And the point of this exercise is we're going to be talking about Cam Ward as a player and a prospect, and he's obviously, the focus of our game that we have game day there. But the real question is, Rece Davis, who would you pick?
I think right now I'd take Shedeur Sanders. I think there are some things, holds the ball a little bit. You want to make sure that in an NFL locker room that guys will come to him and play for him, but he can move. He can make throws going a lot of different ways. He can really, really spin it. But if you continue to see improvement in the intermediate passing game, it would be Jalen Milroe easily. If you got to have that in the NFL, you've got to throw with anticipation. You've got to throw guys open. And Kalen DeBoer told me last week that he had made great strides, particularly over the last week and a half. I think the ball that he threw to Ryan Williams, it turned out to be the game winner, is an example of that. He threw it to the back shoulder. He didn't, Ryan went and got it. He gave him a chance to get it. He trusted that it could work that way. He's got a huge arm. He's crazy fast. And he is a mountain of a man. All of the things that you would want in an NFL quarterback, but an NFL quarterback has to be able to play on time and has to be able to throw with anticipation, has to be able to throw guys open. So there needs to be improvement there. But I think the highest ceiling of any of those guys that you mentioned is Jalen Milroe, and it's pretty easy in that regard. But you need to see a little more before you would go QB1 there, I think. So you need to see that. The guy as a passer, pure passer, it's funny. I understand why there are different opinions because the best pure passer, in my judgment, in the group is yours. Yeah. You know, just like let's spin it, put the ball where it needs to be. That would be the guy. But if you're looking for the modern age guy that can run around a little bit to be one of the other guys, and Ward is certainly in the mix as well.
So you're sitting there at 13. You need a quarterback. Shador and Milroe are off the board. Would you take Beck or Ewers or Cam Ward?
Ewers.
You would take Ewers. Okay.
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, and that I don't mean that disrespectfully to Beck. I think Quinn Ewers is really stinking good. I think he's really good. You know I love Arch Manning. I but I think Quinn Ewers is a dude. You know, so I really do. And I think Beck is going to be a good pro too.
Yeah. I wonder if I did this poll coming out of Michigan, if it was any different, right? Like he's been out of sight, out of mind a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Because coming out of Michigan, I was like, oh boy, like that might be the best single game quarterback performance we see this year to go in that venue against that defense. Mm-hmm. You know, Will Johnson's practically averaging a pick 6 a game, you know?
Yeah. Pete, you bring up that calls to mind something really important because we've seen it right now in the NFL. I don't know why. I know Sam Darnold a little bit. I don't know him well. Enjoyed meeting him when he was at USC, and I have taken such great delight in the way he's playing at Minnesota. Oh, really? So Sam Darnold doesn't stink after all. How about that? You know, what a surprise. You know, you've got to give them the right structure around them. So a lot of this about going QB1 is what are you going to do around them and what are you going to build? If you take Jalen Milroe, are you going to let him run an offense in the vein of Lamar Jackson? Are you going to do that? You know, if you are doing pure passer, then you probably choose among Ewers, Beck, or Shador. Shador and Cam Ward are probably, even though Ewers and Beck can move, I'm not saying that, but Shador and Ward are probably, a little bit more of a hybrid. But, it depends on what are you going to do on offense around them? Are you going to play to their strengths, or are you going to take a quarterback, not help him the way you should, put him in there and almost ruin him? And I'm thrilled to death for Sam Darnold. I think this is awesome that he's playing the way he is. And that's a big thing too. Do you have a good organizational plan that whoever you take, you are not just, everybody says they're building around him because they took him first. Are you evaluating his strengths and then building around the strengths to allow him to do what he does well and give him time and avenues to improve the areas he needs to improve?
Can I tell a story?
Please.
I've been waiting to tell this story because I was so struck by it in the moment. And then, so 2 springs ago, I got assigned to cover the Sweet 16 in Louisville. And I found out that Ohio State Pro Day, which isn't that far from Louisville, it's like, 2.5-hour drive, was the Wednesday before the Thursday Sweet 16. So anyway, flew to Columbus first thing in the morning, go to Pro Day, and I'm walking through the Woody Hayes Athletic Center to go walk out on the field, and I see a gentleman walking with like a crowd around him, like social media videos, stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, like to see that, because pro days are pretty sober experiences. Like I don't know if you've ever been to one and watched them. It's like a lot of like dudes in pullovers with stopwatches. Like there's not a lot of like commotion at pro days. And this is obviously CJ Stroud's pro day, right? So and Marvin Harrison ran routes and kind of caught buzz that ended up, with him getting drafted where he was. So anyway, I'm looking around and I'm like, who is that? And it's David Tepper, the Carolina owner. And he is with his wife because he was flying around because there was a couple pro days in a row, and like an entire social media team. And I'm like, is that really like how we're going to conduct business? Like it was like going to pro day as like a weekend in Montauk or something. Like it really just, and this is no offense to Mrs. Tepper, but like I don't think it speaks well of your organization if you're just waltzing into a pro day like that. It just to me, there's a famous story in Boston about Robert Kraft when he finally like took his nose out of the football side of things with the Patriots. Some would argue he really hasn't, but there was like when Belichick sort of wrestled things over, there was a famous story about Bob Kraft pulling up to Manley Fieldhouse at Syracuse to scout to Bucky Jones, who, by the way, the Patriots took. He was a very good defensive back in the late '90s. There, they picked him in the '20s, and he rolled into Manley Fieldhouse in a limo, and it was like, do we have any self-awareness here? Like, are we actually like running a football operation, or do we have our like social media cameras out because we're like trying to play the owner on Twitter? And I said that's a very long way to say like free Bryce Young. All right. Bryce Young was always the anomaly because of his size. He is not 6 feet tall. And he was always going to need the right situation to thrive, like he had at Alabama, where he had massive, great offensive lines and great weapons. And he was always there was going to be a curve for him to adjust to the NFL. The absolute worst place to do that was Carolina. And as Tepper has gone on, and I don't think this is like a hot take that he's cemented himself as the worst owner in the league, right? Is that crazy to say? I mean, they've had 3 coaches in 3 years. They've churned through front offices. Their roster, people would tell you, is the worst in the NFL. Like it's, generally a disaster. And for somebody of David Tepper's success, he's like massively rich even by NFL owner standards, right? Like the other guys are like just merely rich compared to how much money he has. You have to sit there and look at yourself in the mirror and you have to say, I'm not good at this. Like I was really good at making money and derivatives and all that stuff. I'm really good at that. I am not good at running a football team. So I'm going to hire people to run a football team and I'm going to run it. And in this period of awakening, bringing your wife to pro day, trying to be like the hero on social media, the carnage is Bryce Young. So I'm not telling the story. The reason I'm telling the story is because we're talking about quarterbacks and quarterbacks needing a chance and needing a window. And I'm starting to feel like Mad Mel Kiper a little bit here. So I've got to calm down. That was all said. That was all said pragmatically. The last thing I need is like Ty Schmidt imitating me, imitating Mad Mel Kiper.
That'd be great. I'm going to suggest that to Ty. That would be here as it pertains to that. And I don't know that I believe any of these quarterbacks rise to this standard. There are, in my lifetime / professional lifetime, only a handful of quarterbacks that I believe were so transcendent that they could overcome the things you're talking about. Here's my list, and you tell me if there's anybody else you can think of that they were going to elevate the team, turn them into winners regardless. John Elway, Andrew Luck, Cam Newton, Peyton Manning, not because of physical prowess, but he was so advanced and such a leader in terms of demanding that of everybody around him that they were going to be great regardless of what the other circumstances were. He was going to turn them into winners. And I debate over whether I put Brady in that category, to be honest. He was a really good college quarterback, really good. He was always better than Drew Henson. They always played better when Tom Brady was on the field than Drew Henson. But the other guy that probably didn't quite do it that I thought would was Michael Vick. Michael Vick was the other guy that I thought it doesn't matter. They'll win with him. But whether you put Brady in, don't put Brady in, you probably should for the same reasons you put Peyton in, not the Elway, Luck, Cam, model where they're just going to be so physically imposing that they're going to win and elevate people because they're also good leaders. But, I think that, it's none of the guys that we're talking about now really fit into that mold, and all of them the organizations that take them will have to be committed to amplifying their strengths and minimizing their weaknesses until they improve those weaknesses. Does that make sense?
No, that makes a lot of sense. For you to be corrective of a franchise's sins, you have to be a transcendent talent.
No.
And
in one way or the other, physically
yes.
or mentally or a combination of both.
Yes.
And when I say that, I don't mean to say that Peyton and Tom Brady didn't have great physical skill.
Yeah.
They certainly did.
Sure.
They just weren't Cam Newton.
We saw the Tom Brady combine picture.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's and he was the 199th pick famously. The other guys were all picked 198 spots ahead, right?
And he remembered that too.
Yes. Oh, he remembers everything. Yeah, that's what Tom certainly remembers anything. But I just hope that, Sam Darnold's arc gives Bryce Young hope. There's a lot of time left, but I just hope in a very quarterback needy league, the Panthers admit they ruined Bryce Young, trade him somewhere. They'd probably get a 3rd round pick for him at this point, a 4th round pick. I don't know NFL trade value enough. I've already gone out over my skis enough out of my area of expertise on this podcast. But that's just, as I've seen him benched and all that rhetoric, all I could think about was like that day at Pro Day and just being like, what is this guy doing? Like, is this real life? Like, this is how you run an NFL franchise? This is like a guy who's done whatever he wants his whole life because he's rich and nobody has the guts to be like, hey, pal, this looks awful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Let's not do that. And as it pertains to the draft, which is not necessarily the subject of our discussions here, the draft is the beginning. It's not the end. But in this case, talk about the draft and the quarterbacks, which Pete will have more on, I think, this weekend on College Game Day. It is the end of the podcast. So we encourage you to download this podcast wherever you prefer to download them, or better yet, subscribe, never miss an episode. For Pete, I'm Rece. We'll see you close to Tightwad Hill, of which Pete most certainly is not. He is a generous fellow. We'll see you from Cal.